The morning sun painted the city in gold, reflecting off glass towers that stood proudly above the bustling streets. Cars filled the avenues, horns blaring as workers hurried to their offices. Coffee shops buzzed with energy, parents dropped children off at schools, and joggers moved along the sidewalks with headphones in. By the beach, laughter filled the air as children splashed in the waves and tourists posed for photographs. Everything looked perfect, ordinary, peaceful. Nobody knew that the ocean just beyond the horizon had already begun to change. Deep under the seafloor, something ancient stirred. Tectonic plates shifted violently, releasing energy greater than hundreds of atomic bombs. The earth groaned as if tearing itself apart, sending ripples through the deep. The shock traveled fast, invisible to the human eye but powerful enough to transform the sea itself. Out on the water, fishermen noticed their boats rocking strangely. Birds suddenly launched into the air, squawking frantically. The calm surface of the ocean began to swell, darker, heavier, alive with a rage that had been buried for centuries. In the city, life continued as if nothing was wrong. Office elevators chimed, phones rang, and people laughed as they sipped their morning drinks. Screens lit up with morning shows and weather forecasts predicting sunshine and calm seas. No one had the slightest clue that a wall of water taller than the tallest building was racing toward them at hundreds of miles per hour. At the beach, a child pointed to the horizon, noticing how the water seemed to be pulling back unnaturally. Seashells and fish were left flopping on the sand, and curious tourists rushed forward to take pictures. They didn't realize they were standing in the shadow of death. The sirens broke the peace like knives through silence. A wailing sound filled the air, bouncing between skyscrapers, confusing and terrifying everyone who heard it. Loudspeakers boomed with urgent voices, shouting, "Tsunami! Evacuate immediately!" At first, people hesitated, not understanding. But then came the sight that froze them where they stood. The horizon was gone. In its place was an impossible wall of water, rising higher and higher, a mountain of the sea rushing straight for the city. Panic exploded. Families grabbed children and sprinted inland. Cars collided as drivers fought to escape. Strangers shoved each other in the streets, desperate for higher ground. Helicopters circled above, broadcasting live as anchors shouted in disbelief. Police cars blared warnings, officers screaming for people to move faster. Some froze where they stood, staring at the monster wave. It gleamed under the morning sun, massive and unstoppable, curling forward with terrifying beauty. The sound grew louder with every passing second, a roar that drowned out every scream, every prayer, every siren. The first impact hit like the sky collapsing. The wave crashed against the tallest towers, shattering glass and bending steel as if they were toys. Entire blocks disappeared under the crushing weight of water. Buses were lifted and thrown like pebbles, cars stacked on top of each other, boats hurled into buildings. People clung to poles, trees, doorways, anything solid, but the water tore them away without mercy. The city drowned in chaos, swallowed by the ocean's fury. Underwater, silence replaced the screaming. Cars tumbled in slow motion, glass windows cracked, papers and photographs floated like ghosts. People kicked and fought, their bubbles rising to the fading surface light, but the current was too strong. Skyscrapers crumbled as their foundations were ripped apart, collapsing into rubble. Entire lives, decades of memories, were erased in seconds. The city that had taken generations to build vanished in minutes. When the wave finally pulled back, it dragged the wreckage into the sea. Streets were gone, buildings reduced to skeletons, bridges shattered. Fires sparked from broken gas lines, spreading smoke into the ruined skyline. Survivors stumbled through knee-deep water, bleeding, coughing, searching desperately for loved ones. The silence was broken only by sirens in the distance and the cries of those who had lost everything. The city was unrecognizable, a wasteland of destruction. Rescue teams fought their way through the ruins. Helicopters dropped emergency workers, boats carried medical teams into the flooded streets. Voices called out for survivors, searching the rubble, lifting debris, carrying the injured. The world watched live, horrified, as cameras showed the devastation. People everywhere cried for strangers they had never met, realizing how fragile human life was against the raw force of nature. But as night fell, the ocean calmed. The surface reflected the moonlight, quiet and still, as though nothing had happened. Survivors stared at the horizon in disbelief. The same water that had destroyed everything now looked gentle, peaceful, beautiful. It was a cruel trick of nature, a reminder that the sea gives and the sea takes. And deep down, everyone feared the same thing, that this nightmare was not over. Morning came again, but it was not the same city. Streets were filled with mud, debris, and silence. Families searched the wreckage for missing loved ones, holding photographs in their trembling hands. Children cried for parents who would never return. Rescue dogs barked, pulling rescuers toward faint sounds buried under rubble. Each discovery was a battle between hope and despair. Every survivor pulled from the ruins was a miracle. Every body was a tragedy too heavy to bear. News anchors described it as one of the worst disasters in modern history. Governments sent aid, planes full of food, medicine, and soldiers to help. The city became a sea of tents and emergency camps, filled with the wounded and the grieving. Volunteers arrived from across the world, holding hands with survivors, offering comfort, sharing tears. Humanity came together in a way rarely seen, united by tragedy. But survivors carried scars that no medicine could heal. Every sound of rushing water made them flinch. Every tremor in the ground made their hearts stop. Children woke screaming from nightmares of walls of water crashing down. Entire families lived with the emptiness of those who never came home. The wave had taken not only lives and buildings, it had stolen peace, leaving behind only fear. Months later, construction crews arrived to rebuild. Cranes lifted steel beams, cement trucks rumbled through the ruins, and new foundations were laid where old ones had been erased. Hope slowly returned, fragile but real. Survivors planted flowers in the rubble, painted murals to remember the lost, and sang songs to remind each other that life always finds a way forward. But every time they looked at the sea, their smiles faded. They knew it was not finished. They knew it could rise again. Years later, the city stood tall once more, brighter, stronger, rebuilt with walls and defenses against the sea. Tourists returned, children played on the sand, and businesses reopened. Life seemed normal again. But hidden in every laugh, in every sunrise, was the memory of that day. The memory of the morning that began with golden sunshine and ended with darkness and destruction. The wave had left its mark not just on the city, but on the souls of everyone who had survived. The ocean lay quiet, stretching endlessly to the horizon, whispering softly against the shore. But the people of the city never forgot. They knew the truth, that no wall, no defense, no human invention could ever truly stop the sea. It waits, patient and silent, until the day it decides to rise again. And when it does, the world will once more remember the unstoppable power of nature, the day when everything can change in a single wave.